I've always believed that creativity and determination are timeless, that it's never too late to build something meaningful. That Christmas, I brought my latest endeavor to the family dinner, an online knitting course I had poured months of work, passion, and innovation into. But instead of encouragement, I was met with mockery. My son-in-law smirked across the table and said, "Still trying to get rich?" My daughter added, "She can't even keep a steady job." Laughter echoed around the room, and for a moment I felt the sting of their disbelief. Then the TV in the background switched to the evening news, and there I was, my face, my work, my success. The headline read, "Local artist becomes millionaire." The room went silent. Shock replaced laughter, and the smug smiles froze. 2 weeks later, I received a call. They had tried to con me. I smiled quietly. It was time to respond. My name is Maggie Delaney, and I am 62 years old. I have spent decades building skills, learning, and embracing creativity, but I never expected my family to mock me for ambition. That Christmas, I had finally launched my online knitting course, a project I poured months of energy, research, and heart into. I wrapped the small gift boxes for family members and dressed carefully, wanting to look presentable, confident, and calm. Driving to my daughter's house, I rehearsed my responses in case anyone doubted or criticized me. I reminded myself that my pride was private until I was ready to reveal it. Confidence isn't loud, it's deliberate. I entered the house carrying my work, my accomplishments, and a quiet hope that maybe tonight they would finally see me for more than a label. The house was alive with holiday decorations, the smell of baked goods filling the air, and laughter bouncing off the walls. I carefully arranged the knitting kits and course brochures on the side table, hoping to spark curiosity, not confrontation. Each step in the kitchen reminded me of years I spent balancing work, family, and my personal goals. I quietly helped with final touches, hanging ornaments and adjusting napkins, ensuring the evening felt perfect. My heart raced slightly at the thought of their reactions. They had always underestimated me, calling my projects trivial or impractical. Tonight, I wanted to maintain composure, let my work speak for itself, and avoid the trap of arguing or defending myself. Still, a small thrill ran through me. After years of quiet effort, the moment of unveiling was finally here. I placed my laptop on the dining room side table and set up a small display of the patterns, kits, and instructions from my online course. My son-in-law raised an eyebrow, barely hiding his smirk, while my daughter whispered a comment under her breath, clearly amused. I held my head high, smiling politely, presenting my work with pride yet without expectation of praise. Years of practice, late nights, and creativity had culminated in this, and for the first time I felt confident showcasing my efforts. This wasn't about approval, it was about claiming space for myself, asserting my competence without aggression. Every glance I caught told me their assumptions remained intact, but I knew the truth. This project had already changed my life, whether they acknowledged it or not. The dining room was bustling, voices mingling with the scent of roasted turkey and pine. The laughter felt slightly tense as I entered, my presence drawing immediate evaluative looks. My daughter-in-law's posture was rigid, her smile polite but forced. My son-in-law leaned casually in his chair, exuding amusement, ready to deliver his comment. I carried myself with calm, each step deliberate, choosing confidence over defensiveness. I greeted relatives with warmth and politeness, resisting the instinct to explain or justify my accomplishments. They assumed familiarity gave them authority to belittle, but I had learned to navigate that subtly. Tonight, the room's energy would test my patience and restraint, and I prepared to let them reveal their true nature while I stayed grounded in my quiet confidence. Just as dessert was being cleared, my son-in-law leaned forward, a smirk curling across his face. "Still trying to get rich?" he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Laughter rippled immediately around the table. The words stung, sharper than I expected, not because they were cruel, but because they revealed how little he respected my efforts. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, but forced a calm smile. I didn't answer immediately, allowing the words to hang in the air, letting him feel the weight of his arrogance. Years of planning, creating, and self-investment had led to this moment, and I understood that my reaction now, quiet, measured, deliberate, was more powerful than any defensive argument could ever be. Before I could respond, my daughter laughed softly, tilting her head with mock concern. "She can't keep steady work," she added, emphasizing her point as if it were obvious. The room erupted in forced chuckles, polite but piercing. My son-in-law nodded in agreement, expecting me to shrink, apologize, or explain. Instead, I stayed composed, letting their assumptions echo in the air without interruption. I realized in that moment how easily they had misjudged me, how quickly they assumed incompetence. My silence was deliberate, a quiet power that would make them underestimate me one last time before the truth could emerge. The sting was there, but it fueled my patience and anticipation for what would come next. I sat back, folding my hands calmly on my lap, letting the laughter continue around me. I didn't respond, I didn't flinch, and I didn't let them see my reaction beyond a polite smile. Their assumptions were loud and confident, but I knew the truth. The work I had done was real, profitable, and respected outside this house. My patience was intentional, my restraint deliberate. By holding my composure, I let them feel in control while I quietly prepared the moment when reality would reveal itself. The irony, the hidden strength, and the anticipation of eventual acknowledgement made the silence satisfying. For now, their mockery was a performance, and I was ready to let the show continue until the timing was perfect. After the dinner, I spent countless hours refining my online knitting course, meticulously planning every detail. From lesson schedules to marketing strategies, every step was deliberate. I wanted to ensure that the work I put my heart into would translate into success, not just recognition. Late nights and early mornings became routine, but I embraced the challenge. While the family continued to underestimate me, I quietly expanded my skills and network, connecting with suppliers, designers, and tech consultants. Every email, every negotiation, every creative decision was a brick in the foundation of my independence. No one knew the hours I invested, the obstacles I overcame, or the discipline required. I was building something lasting, and the irony was delicious. While they mocked me, I was steadily shaping a life that would soon make them regret ever doubting me. The course began gaining traction slowly but steadily. I monitored analytics, adjusted modules, and interacted with students online, refining the program in real time. The orders for kits and subscriptions started arriving, small at first, but enough to validate my work. I quietly celebrated each milestone alone, aware that my family still believed I was struggling with employment. They had no idea I was creating a profitable business from scratch. My confidence grew with every sale, every positive review, every shared success story from students. I kept this world separate from my family's assumptions, letting their ridicule continue while I built credibility and influence quietly. They assumed weakness. I knew it was patience, discipline, and strategic timing that would give me the ultimate advantage. Months passed, and the profits grew beyond my expectations. I invested wisely, saving and reinvesting, never boasting or sharing my success. Every bank statement, every contract, every small payment from students was a quiet victory. They laughed at my ambitions, mocked my efforts, and assumed I couldn't create stability. Meanwhile, I became financially independent and strong, unshakable in my confidence. The irony was intoxicating. Their perception of me was rooted in underestimation, while the reality of my growing wealth and influence quietly solidified. Each milestone brought me closer to a position where I could assert my authority and prove my worth. I smiled privately at the thought that one day, their arrogance would be confronted with undeniable truth, and it would be unforgettable. With the business thriving, I began signing agreements for broader exposure. Media interviews, local newspaper features, and online campaigns were planned meticulously. I arranged the announcements to coincide with moments that would maximize impact. The process required diplomacy, attention to detail, and precision. No one suspected that the quiet, underestimated woman they mocked had become the center of a growing media spotlight. Every contract signed and every strategy implemented strengthened my position and ensured that when the reveal came, it would be undeniable. I prepared for the perfect timing, knowing that patience was as powerful as profit. My excitement was calm, controlled, and purposeful. Soon, the laughter around that Christmas dinner would turn into disbelief and awe. I kept an eye on my son-in-law and daughter, watching how they continued their casual mockery and assumed superiority. Social media, casual conversations, and shared family updates all revealed their patterns of entitlement. They had no clue that I was quietly establishing authority over my own life, income, and recognition. Every laugh, every whispered comment about my inability to succeed only strengthened my resolve. I was learning about their behavior, their expectations, and their overconfidence, all critical for the perfect reveal. Observation became a tool, as powerful as any legal document or media feature. By understanding their assumptions, I could strategically choose the moment when reality would collide with their arrogance, and it would leave them speechless. Their overconfidence was staggering. They believed my patience and quiet demeanor were signs of weakness or passivity. They continued to assume that I would remain compliant, that their mockery and condescension would never be challenged. I watched their arrogance flourish, noting every misstep, every word, every casual insult, knowing that each would make the eventual revelation even more dramatic. Their belief in my incapability created the perfect conditions for my triumph. I remained calm, letting their assumptions grow unchecked, all while my business and reputation quietly flourished. The power of underestimated patience was a weapon, and I held it with deliberate precision, ready to use at the exact moment that would make the impact unforgettable. Timing was everything. I carefully planned the reveal of my success to coincide with a moment of maximum impact. Whether at a family gathering, a public event, or through media exposure, I ensured that the unveiling would be undeniable. My wealth, recognition, and achievements would confront every assumption they had made, leaving no room for doubt. I rehearsed the timing mentally, imagining their shock, disbelief, and sudden respect. Every email, contract, and social media post had been scheduled with precision to guarantee the perfect effect. The culmination of months of hard work and strategic patience was about to unfold, and I felt a quiet thrill in knowing that their arrogance would meet reality in the most unforgettable way possible. I sat at the dinner table with perfect composure, letting the festive chatter flow around me. The aroma of roast turkey and baked goods filled the air, mingling with the faint sound of laughter and clinking cutlery. My son-in-law and daughter were confident, assuming my quiet demeanor was weak, a signal that their mockery had worked. I smiled politely, nodding occasionally at relatives' comments, careful not to give away any hint of my impending reveal. Inside, I felt a quiet excitement and satisfaction, knowing that the culmination of months of hard work and careful planning was about to unfold. I kept my hands folded on my lap, my posture relaxed, and my expression calm, while the truth behind my success waited silently, ready to strike at the perfect moment, shocking everyone around the table. The laughter grew louder, and my son-in-law's smirk widened as he whispered jokes about my online knitting course. My daughter leaned in, joining the ridicule with exaggerated gestures, mocking my unstable work history and futile ambitions. The room buzzed with casual arrogance, their confidence palpable. I let them continue, observing every facial expression, every laugh, every glint of superiority. My calm smile never wavered, but internally, anticipation and thrill bubbled. I knew that their assumptions about my incapability had made the perfect stage for revelation. Each comment, each chuckle, only amplified the eventual impact of my success. They assumed dominance, blind to the fact that their laughter and mockery had already fueled the timing of my triumph. Patience was my ally, and I let them believe they were winning, all while holding the power quietly in my hands. As the conversation lulled slightly, I subtly reached for the remote and turned on the television, ensuring the volume was just right for everyone to hear. The room's attention gradually shifted to the screen, and I felt their glances flick toward me with curiosity. I had coordinated the timing perfectly. The evening news was set to air a feature about my achievements, and I controlled the reveal. The TV screen flickered to life, and I maintained my calm composure, letting the moment build suspense silently. Every second that passed before the headline fully appeared heightened anticipation. Their smug smiles faltered, their laughter paused, and an unspoken tension filled the room. This was the exact moment when their assumptions would collide with reality. The news anchor's voice announced, "Local artist becomes millionaire," and the camera zoomed in on my face. I sat calmly, letting the words register without interruption. The display of my success on television was undeniable, profits, recognition, and achievements all visible in full clarity. I noticed their expressions immediately, jaws tightening, eyes widening, laughter dying in their throats. The smug confidence my son-in-law had flaunted moments ago disappeared in an instant, replaced by disbelief and shock. My daughter, equally stunned, could only gape at the screen, realizing that her assumptions had been completely wrong. I remained composed, smiling faintly, but letting the visual evidence of my success speak for itself. The room went silent, and the impact of months of patience, effort, and strategic planning finally landed with full force. For a long moment, no one spoke. The laughter, the whispers, and the casual mockery evaporated instantly. My son-in-law froze mid-sip, realizing that the woman he had dismissed and belittled had not only succeeded, but surpassed every expectation he had assumed. My daughter's hand trembled slightly as she tried to form words, but nothing coherent emerged. The relatives in the room glanced between the screen and me, astonishment clear in their eyes. I observed them silently, letting the gravity of their shock sink in fully. Every expression told me that their assumptions about my weakness, instability, and irrelevance had been shattered. The power dynamic had flipped, and they had no idea how to respond. For the first time that evening, I felt the quiet satisfaction of patience and strategy paying off in a dramatic, undeniable way. I kept my composure, my lips curved in a subtle, knowing smile. No words were necessary. The screen and the silence conveyed the message more powerfully than any explanation ever could. Their shock, disbelief, and unease became my ally, emphasizing the contrast between their assumptions and reality. I didn't gloat, didn't speak, and didn't need to justify myself. Every glance I received reflected understanding dawning far too late. The calmness of my demeanor amplified the impact of the reveal. Success achieved quietly, revealed strategically, and leaving my critics powerless. I had turned patience into a weapon and restraint into authority. While they searched for words, I remained poised, knowing that the moment had forever changed the way they perceived me. I allowed myself a quiet internal celebration, relishing the astonishment mirrored on my son-in-law and daughter's faces. Their previous laughter and condescension seemed absurd now, almost comical as they realized the truth. The satisfaction wasn't about revenge, it was about validation, recognition, and finally reclaiming respect that had long been denied. I observed every twitch, every wide-eyed glance, every silent acknowledgement, storing the memory of this moment in my mind. My work, patience, and strategic planning had culminated perfectly. They had underestimated me for years, and now, their shock was undeniable proof that assumptions based on arrogance and dismissal had consequences. The room remained tense, silent, and full of awe, while I smiled calmly, knowing that the next steps would consolidate my triumph even further. 2 weeks after the Christmas dinner, my phone rang, displaying my son-in-law's name. I felt a subtle shift of anticipation as I answered, knowing his presence in my life had always been underpinned by entitlement. His voice sounded unusually hurried, tight, almost flustered. They were reaching out under the guise of needing help, but I recognized the telltale tone of manipulation immediately. I kept my voice neutral, letting the pause hang in the air as he began his explanation, a mixture of pleading and rationalization. The calm before the storm filled me with purpose. I was prepared to handle this with patience, precision, and deliberate control. I didn't rush into reaction. Instead, I listened, observing every hesitation and every inflection, already mapping the landscape of their attempt to con me once again. As he spoke, it became crystal clear. This was no innocent request. The urgency in his words, the careful phrasing, the pauses designed to elicit sympathy, all pointed to manipulation. I remained calm, letting him fill the silence with his own assumptions and excuses. I noted each word, each inflection, recognizing the patterns of deceit I had observed countless times before. The con was transparent to me, but I let him continue, allowing the truth to reveal itself organically. My restraint was deliberate. By not reacting too soon, I ensured they underestimated my awareness. Each phrase he used, each pleading tone, made the web of their scheme more evident. In that moment, patience became my weapon, and silence my shield, as I prepared to reclaim authority over the situation with strategic precision. Desperation seeped into his voice as he realized his usual tactics might not work. He attempted flattery, veiled threats, and subtle guilt, all designed to pressure me into compliance. The confident tone he used with family was gone, replaced by urgency and tension. I didn't interrupt, let alone respond with anger. Instead, I allowed the words to expose the fragility of his confidence. Every attempt at manipulation only confirmed my understanding of their patterns and vulnerabilities. I mentally cataloged each phrase, noting where he overplayed and where his panic slipped through his rehearsed veneer. The more he tried, the more transparent he became. I remained calm, measured, and unshaken. His desperation, rather than intimidating me, reinforced my control, showing me exactly how far they were willing to go, and how carefully I could dismantle their scheme without confrontation. In the background, my daughter's voice emerged, soft and coaxing, attempting to explain or rationalize her husband's behavior. She tried to charm me into compliance, sprinkling compliments and appeals for understanding, but her words carried an edge of panic. I could hear the tension in her breathing, the hurried tone masking uncertainty. I allowed her to continue, silently observing every nuance, every strategy she used to regain influence over me. Her attempts revealed both fear and overconfidence, the assumption that her charm could sway me. I remained composed, letting her reveal the desperation behind her speech without interruption. Each word she uttered, each fleeting hope she carried in her voice, only confirmed my awareness of the dynamics and strengthened my resolve. I wasn't being cruel, I was being deliberate. I maintained my calm, speaking only when necessary, choosing my words carefully. My silence became a tool, emphasizing that I was not panicked, not desperate, not pliable. By listening attentively, I gathered everything I needed: their intentions, their weaknesses, their reliance on assumed compliance. Each pause I allowed built tension on the other end, making them fill the space with truth they thought they could conceal. I analyzed patterns, vocal inflections, and implied demands, silently preparing my response. Calm was my greatest ally, authority my shield. While they attempted to manipulate, I was observing and understanding. The balance of power, temporarily assumed to belong to them, had already shifted. I held the advantage simply by being deliberate, strategic, and unreactive. The more they spoke, the more their panic surfaced naturally, betraying intentions they thought were hidden. Their hurried phrases, repeated explanations, and slightly contradictory statements painted a clear picture. They believed they could con me, and their plan was unraveling in real time. I allowed the tension to grow, creating a silent spotlight on their desperation. Each breath, each rushed word, each pleading pause reinforced my understanding of their manipulation. They had no idea that their panic, intended to pressure me, only clarified their intent. Observing without interruption, I felt the satisfaction of anticipation, knowing that once I responded, the consequences would be undeniable and fully controlled by me. Their scheme was transparent. I simply waited for the perfect moment to reclaim authority. I let the call unfold to its natural conclusion, taking notes mentally, weighing every word, every implied threat, and every appeal. I refused to respond impulsively, knowing that measured action would create far more impact than immediate confrontation. My mind mapped the next steps: strategic confrontation, boundaries reinforced, and undeniable authority asserted. I remained calm, even-tempered, and deliberately non-reactive, letting their frustration and panic compound. This pause wasn't indecision, it was deliberate power. By refusing to give them the satisfaction of an immediate answer, I controlled the narrative entirely. When I finally responded, it would be on my terms, at my timing, and with precision designed to leave no room for misinterpretation or future manipulation. I smiled quietly, knowing that patience had prepared me to strike decisively. Don't miss what happens next. Hit like and subscribe, because the story is about to take a turn they'll never forget. I finally spoke, my voice calm and measured, revealing the truth of their attempted con. Every word was deliberate, exposing the manipulation without raising my tone or showing anger. I laid out the evidence I had gathered, detailing each misstep, every deceitful tactic, and the consequences of their actions. My son-in-law stammered, unable to interrupt, while my daughter tried to salvage the situation with nervous whispers. I remained composed, letting the weight of my words sink in, showing that I had anticipated every move and would not tolerate deceit. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with shock and realization. They understood that this was no casual reprimand. It was a calculated demonstration of authority, patience, and insight. For the first time, they grasped that I was no longer the person to underestimate. Once the con was revealed, I calmly explained the consequences. I didn't threaten, I stated facts: broken trust, accountability for promises, and boundaries that could no longer be crossed. Their previous reliance on my patience and compliance was now irrelevant. Every action moving forward would be measured, transparent, and deliberate. I emphasized that dishonesty and manipulation could no longer be tolerated, framing it not as revenge, but as the restoration of order and respect. My tone was firm but not vengeful, conveying authority rather than emotion. As I spoke, their panic grew, eyes widening at the realization that past behaviors had consequences. The shift in power was unmistakable, and for the first time, they felt the weight of accountability resting solely on their shoulders. Their faces told the story. They finally understood the gravity of underestimating me. Words stumbled out, apologies awkward and belated, but the timing had passed. They realized too late that their mockery, their arrogance, and their attempts at manipulation had been entirely misjudged. Their previous laughter, which once felt harmless, now seemed like a distant echo of ignorance. Every excuse and justification fell flat, leaving only the stark recognition of my strength and foresight. I remained calm, observing their transformation from confidence to hesitation, disbelief, and regret. The realization was painful for them, but empowering for me, a reminder that patience, strategy, and deliberate action were far more powerful than immediate confrontation or anger. I set clear boundaries, calmly outlining what behaviors were unacceptable and what expectations were now in place. No more casual assumptions, no more entitlement, no more manipulations. My authority was reclaimed with quiet confidence, each word deliberate, leaving no room for ambiguity. They listened tense, recognizing that their previous leverage had vanished. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't plead, and I didn't seek approval. I simply asserted control over what was mine: respect, dignity, and the ability to dictate terms in my life. The subtle shift in dynamics was palpable, and I felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that I had taken back power without chaos, confrontation, or drama. Authority, after years of being overlooked, was now undeniably mine. Room's energy changed as my boundaries settled into place. My son-in-law and daughter were no longer the dominant voices. Their casual arrogance had been replaced by a tentative respect. Family interactions shifted subtly, with caution, acknowledgement, and restraint replacing entitlement. Others in the household noticed the change, sensing that the balance had permanently shifted. I no longer needed to assert myself aggressively. The mere presence of confidence, authority, and self-possession spoke volumes. Their belated recognition was evident in tone, gestures, and glances. Respect, long ignored or withheld, had arrived at last, not because I demanded it, but because I had demonstrated patience, strategy, and unshakable composure, allowing my actions and achievements to communicate what words could not. With the confrontation behind me, I focused on consolidating my independence. My business thrived, my assets were secure, and I had reinforced my personal and professional boundaries. Every decision was deliberate, every action measured, ensuring that my autonomy was respected and maintained. I invested in growth, partnerships, and visibility, confident that the foundation I built would remain untouchable. The family's attempts at condescension or control had been neutralized. They could no longer interfere in my affairs. I felt a profound sense of stability, knowing that years of hard work and strategic patience had culminated in lasting empowerment. Success was no longer private. It was undeniable, respected, and fully mine. I sat quietly, reflecting on the journey from mockery to triumph. The tension, the ridicule, and the manipulation of the past now felt distant, replaced by calm, confidence, and self-respect. I didn't need apologies or acknowledgement to validate my victory. The power, independence, and dignity I reclaimed were proof enough. Every step I had taken, patience, strategy, deliberate action, had culminated in a personal triumph that no one could take away. The family dynamics had shifted, my boundaries were respected, and my work and achievements were recognized. In that serene moment, I understood that empowerment isn't about revenge, it's about reclaiming control, asserting value, and choosing peace over approval. Finally, I was free, confident, and victorious in my own life.